So let me begin with two very important introductions. David Walmsley and Natalie Turvey. To start tonight's celebration, I think many of you know them, but let me make sure that you remember. They are part of the engine that makes a night like tonight possible. She is the president and executive director of the Canadian Journalism Foundation, and he is the chair of the foundation, and he also happens to be the editor-in-chief of the Globe and Mail. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Natalie Turvey and David Walmsley. Thank you.
We are so honored to have Brian as our host for this year's World News Day, and we are thrilled to welcome Brian and many of tonight's guests to our great country of Canada. Canada has earned a global reputation as a leader on important issues: peacekeeping, climate change, immigration, gender balance at our highest levels of government, and with our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the guarantee of freedom of the press. Journalism underpins every free society. Freedom of the press is protected under the U.S. Amendment in the U.S. Under the First Amendment in the U.S., it is a pillar of our democracy. But as Brian noted, we gather at a time when journalism is under attack all over the world. For nearly 30 years, the Canadian Journalism Foundation has been a force for excellence in journalism. Through programs moving the dial on news literacy, monthly J-Talks that highlight the role journalism plays in a healthy democracy, and through awards and fellowships that honor excellence and support next-generation journalists. Our founding motto, "As journalism goes, so goes democracy," can feel more like a rallying cry in these challenging and unpredictable times. So today, World News Day, we remind ourselves that journalism is a fundamental institution in our society. Good journalism starts with a good story. Great journalism is when the telling of that story leads to powerful change. World News Day was created to celebrate the power of journalism and the stories that need to be told. So tonight we have some of North America's top journalists on our stage, people who are the agents of change. We're also honored to be joined by people at the center of important news stories who can speak firsthand to the power of journalism and how it changed their lives and their communities. And we'll hear some stories in song from the stellar musical talent who are with us in support of journalism and World News Day. A night like tonight would only be possible with the generosity of our sponsors. Our gratitude to the Globe and Mail, the Google News Initiative, the Facebook Journalism Project, CBC News, and Toronto Star. Thank you. And thanks to you. And thanks to all of you for being here tonight to support quality journalism. You are all part of the solution. Proceeds from tonight's ticket sales will go to support the CJF-CBC Indigenous Journalism Fellowships. The program provides 2 Indigenous journalists early in their careers valuable training, resources, and mentorship with CBC News. The reporting from the fellowships brings vital Indigenous voices, stories, and perspectives to Canada's major media. Your support tonight and tomorrow means that journalists can continue to share the stories that need to be told and ensure that our democracy remains true, strong, and free. David Walmsley.
Thanks, Natalie. And thanks to all of you for being here today. The Newsies got us off to the right start. It's been a dream of ours since we created this 2 years ago that we will fill auditoriums around the world. And today, in Asia, in Africa, and in Europe, World News Day is a reality. It's about us connecting with the audience and doing a better job than anything we have done as an industry before. The Achilles we have, the problems we face, are partly our own. As journalists, we don't do a good enough job of explaining the effort, the commitment, the blood, the sweat, and the tears that are essential to be strong journalists. Earlier today, I was in Ottawa meeting with parliamentarians, meeting with ambassadors from 7 different countries, and talking to them about the importance of journalism. Tomorrow is World Press Freedom Day around the world, and it's a day where we do remember. And what is it we remember? We remember that 285 journalists are imprisoned today because of the job they do. We remember the 45 journalists who were killed in 2018 because of their job, and the over 200 others, including fixers, stringers, and people who weren't supported by big companies who also lost their lives in the front line. Killings are happening as recently as last month, and journalists in Venezuela, even yesterday, were severely injured. And so we have to tell a better message. We have to tell our story as an industry. And I thought today, at a conversation I had with Steve Adler, who is the global editor-in-chief for Reuters, he referenced a quote from Thomas Jefferson, and I wanted to read it back to you, and some of it's familiar. He said, "Were it left to me to decide whether we should have a government without newspapers or newspapers without a government, I should not hesitate a moment to prefer the latter." That's a famous quote. It's embossed inside the Washington Post's head office in the United States. Perhaps, though, the last line of that quote is also vitally important to remember. He went on to say, "But I should mean that every man, and for this purpose, of course, today, woman, child, and citizen, that everyone should receive those newspapers and be capable of reading them." So what role will misinformation play in our democracy? This question weighs heavily on the minds of Canadians. In a poll that was just released today by the CJF, 40% of Canadians say they find it difficult to distinguish between truth and misinformation. More than half of Canadians have come across stories recently where they believe the facts were twisted to push an agenda. So the CJF is tackling these concerns head on as Canadians prepare to head to the polls in the fall. And today, with real delight, I'm able to tell everyone that Google News Initiative has announced a grant of $1 million to the CJF to bring news literacy skills to voting-age Canadians. We have in our audience tonight the Senior Vice President for Google News Worldwide, Richard Ingres, who will be on stage in a little bit. And the goal of the initiative, with the CJF in the lead, is simple. Help all Canadians. Help us to understand the difference between what is my lifelong commitment of fact-based journalism and the competition and the fierce fight that we have to now take on with those who lie in the digital world. To be engaged in our democracy, every citizen needs to have access to quality information. Which brings me to Maria Ressa. Time Magazine's Person of the Year. She's one of the bravest people I've ever met. But she's not a person per se, a collection. And she represents that collection of journalists from around the world who are competing against fake news. Maria is the CEO of Rappler. She's been arrested and charged on 8 separate occasions by President Duterte of the Philippines. One of the criminal charges against her was a crime that didn't exist when she published the story. She has been the target of many politically motivated investigations in her work and also in her personal life. Despite this persecution, Maria remains. It's her unwavering commitment to the truth that is a standard that we all aspire to continue to use as a source of inspiration and resolve, and in particular in Canada, a country with many more advantages. The CJF is pleased to announce we will honor Maria at our 2019 gala, and we hope so many of you can join us for what will be a remarkable celebration of a very brave journalist. To paint a picture of the lives and the sacrifices of journalists in a hostile regime, some of Maria's colleagues at Rappler turned the camera on themselves. Let's take a look.
Have you ever been harassed because of your work?
Yes.
Have you been threatened online?
Ay, oo.
Have you been called biased?
Yes.
Have you been called stupid?
Yes, plenty times. By idiots.
Have you been called disrespectful?
Yes.
Have you been accused of corruption?
Yes.
Have you been called ugly as a response to any story?
Yes.
Have you been called fake news?
Oh yeah, they always say I'm fake news. Anything that's critical is fake, right?
Have you been accused of being an imperialist spy?
Yes.
Have you been accused of being a communist operative?
Yes.
Have you been accused of working for the CIA?
Yes.
Have you been sexually harassed as a journalist?
Yes.
Has your family been threatened, harassed, or alluded to?
Yes, it has. Specifically my daughter. When she died, there were a lot of people who made fun of that.
Have you been threatened with rape?
Yes.
Yes.
No, not me, but my family.
Have you been threatened with violence?
Yes.
Have you been threatened with death?
Yes.
Have you been told how you're going to be killed?
Yes.
Has the violence been described to you?
Yeah, blow my head off or bury me alive.
What will stop you from reporting?
Nothing.
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 Death.
Did you have to kill me?